In February 1916, World War I, basically a huge who's richer than who contest among European nobles, had already dragged on for 2 full years. Soldiers of both the Central Powers and the Entente were rotting in trenches stretching 700 kilometers long, mainly collapsing and praying for this pointless war to just end already. But the nobles, oh no, they thought the reason the war wasn't over yet was simply because they hadn't thrown in enough men and enough shells. So France and Germany began sending in even more troops and even more artillery. They even lowered the draft age to 15. Yep, literal kids being thrown into a death match against grown men. That's not war, that's sending children to donate their heads. And the mothers, they didn't even have time to beg their sons not to join adult business, because they were busy being forced to hand-roll artillery shells in factories. The French government demanded women produce 2,500 shells each day. Why? Because France was planning a big one-night attack on the Somme to reclaim lost territory. But before France even finished planning this big boom, German spies spilled everything to the other side. Germany's Western Front commander, 54-year-old General Falkenhayn, heard France was preparing to throw a huge army at the Somme. So he figured, if they're all at the Somme, then Verdun in the south must be empty. And if Verdun falls, German artillery could hit Paris directly. To verify his hunch, he sent a 22-year-old pilot named Green that Green to fly over Verdun and film some aerial footage. Green circled above snapping photos like he was shooting a travel vlog, and surprised those photos showed Verdun really was barely defended. So of course Falkenhayn said, let's go steal it. He quickly moved 140,000 German troops overnight toward Verdun, but right as he sent his men, the Kaiser's eldest son, the Crown Prince, jumped out of nowhere demanding to lead the troops to impress Daddy. The Kaiser, being a hopelessly indulgent father, agreed instantly. After all, why not? It's just 140,000 Germans versus 2,000 French soldiers in an empty city. Perfect opportunity for the prince to get some air experience. But here's the problem, the Crown Prince had never fought a real battle. Zero combat experience. The only life he had ever taken was a wild chicken, so expectations very low. Disaster probability extremely high. Inside Verdun, French forces had no idea the Germans were coming. Paris was convinced Germany would never attack the far south city, so Verdun had practically become a rehab center for wounded soldiers. The defending troops, they were literally playing dress-up games pretending to be women. Yes, really, this level of unpreparedness was definitely a disaster-pending situation. So now we have the Kaiser's kid leading 140,000 Germans toward a defended city of 2,000 French soldiers, whose biggest activity so far was cosplay. But the Crown Prince didn't launch a lightning attack. Instead, he told his troops to dig tunnels non-stop. They dug so enthusiastically they didn't even notice a French lookout just 15 meters away watching the whole thing like, bro, seriously. The French lookout obviously wasn't blind, he reported immediately. The French officer in charge of Verdun, Colonel and Parliament member Émile Drouin, instantly knew a huge battle was coming. He begged French Commander-in-Chief Joffre to send reinforcements. But Joffre basically said, don't bother me. I'm busy preparing the Somme offensive. He completely ignored Drouin. Drouin was furious. He threw off his uniform, flashed his politician badge, and threatened to formally accuse Joffre of negligence. Joffre, also not one to be bullied, he took off his own uniform and threatened to resign unless Drouin shut up. The French government couldn't afford to lose Joffre mid-war, so they told Drouin to take his 2,000 men and just hold Verdun for now. Reinforcements would come when necessary. Drouin was like, sure, why don't you go fight 140,000 Germans with 2,000 men? February 10, 1916, the Crown Prince announced the attack would begin at 5 a.m. But then plot twist, several German soldiers defected and warned the French. Drouin felt his soul leave his body. He even wrote his will. But then nature intervened. A massive snowstorm hit, blocking German advance routes. The assault was postponed. With confirmation from defectors, Joffre finally stopped sulking and began sending reinforcements. February 21st, 1916. The Battle of Verdun officially begins after 11 days of delay. The Germans couldn't wait any longer. At sunrise, 1,300 German artillery pieces began bombarding Verdun non-stop. Durand and his 2,000 French troops had to endure a full day of hellfire, millions of shells, flamethrowers, gas attacks. Somehow, this 65-year-old legend held the line for an entire day. The next day, French reinforcements finally arrived with 300 artillery pieces, but they fired directly in front of Durand's position. Congratulations, Verdun had become a friendly fire sandwich. After a day of impossible fighting, Durand and all 2,000 of his men died. The Germans captured Fort Douaumont, but even in that first week, German casualties exceeded 20,000. The Kaiser hesitated, but guess who jumped out again? The Crown Prince, telling him, "Don't wimp out. Once we take Verdun, we can go see the Eiffel Tower." The Kaiser, tempted by tourism, approved more troops. Meanwhile, inside Verdun, civilians were fleeing in panic. Joffre kept sending more men, and because Durand had died, he appointed the nearest commander, 60-year-old Philippe Pétain, to take charge. Where was Tain when notified? At a brothel, having a good time. He literally received his commission paper in a whorehouse. But don't be fooled. Soldiers adored him. He walked in, didn't rush anything, and instead ordered tons of wine delivered to the troops. After everyone got nicely buzzed, he sent them to the front lines. Even the young Captain Charles de Gaulle drank Pétain's wine and charged into battle only to get captured by the Germans. Under endless reinforcement waves, Verdun miraculously held. Tain then asked Joffre for 400,000 more soldiers to push the Germans back. Joffre replied, "How about I send you a prostitute instead?" Translation: sit tight and defend. The real battle is at the Somme. The madness escalates. Tain kept begging for more supplies. Verdun went from 2,000 French defenders to 400,000. There was no strategy, just ramming waves of troops straight into German fire. A month later, Joffre shifted all priority to the Somme. Supplies to Verdun dropped sharply. Tain panicked. Hungry soldiers don't fight. So he started seizing the locals' cows to feed the army. Verdun wasn't destroyed by Germany first, it was robbed clean by its own army. After the cows were gone, Pétain seized local dogs. Civilians were furious. Eat cows if you must, but not the cute dogs. But Tain wasn't planning to eat them. He organized dog supply teams, because all the horses used to transport ammunition had been blown to pieces. He even paid the dog occasionally to put on newspapers as a morale-boosting dog celebrity. The Germans saw this and said, "Say no more," replacing pack horses with zebras, camels, and even elephants from zoos. Suddenly, half of Europe's wildlife was drafted into Verdun. Political drama back at headquarters. Pétain's popularity skyrocketed so high that Joffre felt threatened. So he replaced Tain with another general, Nivelle. Nivelle was even more intense. Within days, he expanded the battle, doubling troop commitments. Casualties shot to 4,000 per day. Eventually, the Somme offensive began, and Verdun finally cooled down. Meanwhile, Tain, now back in Paris as a national hero, revealed his true form. The 60-year-old legend had romantic relationships with over 40 women. The French government couldn't stop him, so they just put him under surveillance. Flirting wasn't the issue. What if one of those ladies turned out to be a spy? That would be a real scandal.